Hey everybody, welcome back to the Maboo Studios. Today we have the guest Randy from the Aquarist podcast, which I was going to say filming, but you don't really film those. You record them, I guess. We recorded an episode earlier for his show, and so you might want to check it out. But it's probably going to be a few weeks before it comes out, right?
It'll be a couple weeks, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we got to put it through my PR people, sanitize it, cut out the swearing,
There were some trade secrets that you let out as well, so we'll have to see if those can pass the filter.
Yep. And so we decided while I had him here, we'd go ahead and do the late night show, which I realize is super late for a lot of people, but YouTube can do this crazy thing where it records it and then you can watch it later. So, yeah, I was thinking we would do that.
That's pretty awesome.
Yeah. So if you have any questions about podcasting, go ahead and ask them. We're going to ask about his experience because it'll be different than my experience. I didn't start a podcast without already having a sizable following, so that experience is like completely different because I easy moded into like being sad that only 3,000 people are watching the show or listening to the show, like, oh, that's dumb, compared to like 40,000 YouTube views or something. And so yeah, we're gonna hang out for about an hour, and I want to get this in the beginning and the middle and the end. But Aquarist Podcast is the name, so you can find that on like every platform under the sun, right?
I try to, yeah. And if I'm not on one, please let me know, and I'll do my best to try to get
I
on
hope
there.
They're gonna get you on like Dig and MySpace.
Well, I'm on
and
Google Play, Stitcher, Podbean, the aquaristpodcast.com, iTunes, even YouTube. So
all right, yeah. So YouTube, you can go subscribe. They're auto uploaded there. So if you're a YouTube person, or if you're a podcast person, which I'm not. I'm more of a YouTube person, but, go ahead and download it there. And who's your last guest if they were to go right now, who's available for them to listen to?
Bentley Pasco. So,
yeah.
Bentley Pasco, Plans for Profit. We did name drop Aquarium Co-op and Corey on that one.
That's what I'm talking about. That's why I have you here today, even though I didn't know.
So Plans for Profit was a fantastic episode. Bentley is an excellent propagator of plants and breeder of fish, so I would definitely check that out. And that was actually live from Bentley's house in the general Seattle area. So that's
live as in it literally was live, or you just recorded it?
Recorded live actually at his home. Normally it's over some type of like internet communication system of how I engage with the guests.
I see. All right, so why did you start a podcast? Let's start there.
How far back do you want me to go as to why I started a podcast?
Well, let's start here. When did you start this podcast?
Let's start with how great it is to have somebody asking me questions
and
me not having to come up with questions. So why did I start a podcast in general? I'm sorry.
Well, the first one is, when did you start this podcast?
Okay. This podcast started pretty much 17, 18 weeks ago. I think I've only taken 1 week off when we had our first family vacation in a couple years. So
that's like February or something, right? Something like that, I think. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, so back in February.
All right. And so
I'm being terrible as an interviewee right now. I'm going to call myself out on that. I'm distracted by the awesomeness of Corey's tanks. So I would be upset at myself if I was doing the interview.
It's A-okay, man. That's what live TV is for. We all get to laugh. It's not even TV, but it's better than TV. So you start the Aquarist podcast, but I know from a previous talking that you had, or at least you attempted a podcast before this.
I did. A good friend of mine that was living with me at the time in Sacramento when I lived in Northern California, we had this brilliant idea that, two guys in their 20s should be able to do a podcast for an hour, maybe once a week, and it would be golden, right? Like that just directionally feels like something that would work out perfectly fine.
Yeah, discuss like beer pong skills, whatever the topic of the week.
Exactly, because at that age, you have had all the life experiences you're ever going to have, and everybody wants to listen to you, right?
Yeah.
So we went down to the local guitar center. We bought some very basic equipment so that we could run 2 microphones into a mixer and then have that record on.
Like how much money was that for 2 dudes in their 20s?
Well, I use my gaming headset as the microphone, so not much.
Yep.
So he ended up buying a fairly inexpensive microphone, like maybe $20 headset.
Okay.
And the most expensive item was, I think, a Behringer brand USB 2-channel mixer. Maybe $80.
Yep.
Between 50 and 80. So very, very low investment. And the audio quality, though, when I actually went back to listen to it, was very poor. So not so great in the audio quality. And so once we had our equipment, we took one of the empty rooms. We set up a folding table. We had everything ready to go, and we had zero script whatsoever. The only thing we had was a name and a vague idea.
What was the name?
I believe it was Veritas and Pomp. So Veritas
Rolls right off the tongue, easy to spell.
So Veritas was supposed to be like my aspect of it, like truthfulness, yada yada yada. And my buddy was the pomp aspect of it, like the pompous guy. So that was our name, and the intro was basically me saying, "Hey, this is us. We're gonna do a podcast. Here we go." And so we start talking about some random topic for maybe 2 minutes, and then it just fizzles.
Yeah,
like we're just sitting here like this, like you and I. We didn't have a Jimmy in the room, unfortunately. That might be
maybe
why.
it made it. Yeah.
And it just completely fizzled out, and we stopped talking, and we both left the room, and we never went back to talk about a podcast again.
Did you talk about like how bad it went, or was it just like you both know it's horrible? One turns and walks out of the room, and you know the friendship's over forever.
No, I think we just stopped. We're like, yeah, we need to actually do like a script, and then we just never worked on a script whatsoever.
The classic, like, wait, this is going to be work? Yeah, I'm not doing that.
Yep. And then we just realized that, without a good focus of what your topic of discussion is going to be, it just wasn't going to work out.
So is that why you chose like aquariums? Is that gave you a focus, or?
10 years later, roughly 10 years later, when I started Aquarist podcast, it was, as listeners to my show know, I've recently gotten back into the hobby, probably 2 months before actually doing the podcast. And with all things that I get into, I like to listen to podcasts on those topics. I commute into work. It's maybe 45 minutes each way, and that's perfect time for listening to podcasts.
Yeah,
right?
And you work at the local dairy?
At the local dairy. Well, if I worked at the local dairy, I'd listen to podcasts all day long.
Yeah,
right?
true.
While I milk cows and, buck hail or buck
To be
hay.
fair, you did bring me fresh eggs today.
I did bring you fresh eggs.
Yeah.
I actually did. They only had a little bit of poo-poo on them.
Yep.
But no, they were absolutely fresh eggs from our chickens. So I hope Dorcula makes some. Can I call her Dorcula?
You can call her anything you want, yeah.
I don't think I've ever.
Although, to be fair,
I saw her from a distance.
Just know that some people on the internet believe that I gave her that name, and it's derogatory. Even though she chose that name herself, there have been many people to contact her and make sure that there are outlets in case I'm abusing her. That's the crazy part of the internet.
And I heard that one of your last live streams, and so that's why I kind of felt it was.
So you might be, your wife or you might be getting contacted to lay off of the abuse,
Then you don't know where any of the Aquarist podcast social media accounts are.
That's right. So it's a little bit crazy, with people in general. But so you film. Okay, so here's what I want to know. You got a podcast. You're going to do aquarium stuff, and I don't know this. And if I was better at
on camera,
definitely.
Is that okay?
Yeah.
Is that a faux pas?
No, I do it all the time.
I'm audio only, guys. I don't know the rules.
Yeah, there are no rules. That's the best part. Except when you ask if it's a rule, then it looks weird. Like, yeah, what he is drinking on the stream. That's water?
Oh, no.
Because what's going to happen now is someone's going to chastise you for using the plastic bottle, even though I've watched him refill it like 6 times. So, but I want to know, who was your first guest on the podcast, or was it like just you yourself?
So if you really want to know who the first guest was, it was a good friend of mine in San Diego, and that was purely a trial run to make sure that I knew how to do audio. And so that's going to be one of those like secret vault episodes.
Oh, so it hasn't been released yet?
It probably never will be released.
Oh.
So this is a good buddy of mine when I lived in San Diego. He's actually a big saltwater fanatic.
Okay.
He's done, I think, 1 or 2 freshwater tanks, but he's a big-time saltwater guy. I may have him on the show to have like a, hey, convert the Aquarist podcast and convince me I need a saltwater tank kind of episode. But yeah, no, that was like the first episode to make sure that, I could actually interview somebody, and that, the audio all worked.
How long was the first podcast? Like when in that test run, how long did you go?
I think we got about 45 minutes.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, when it's your friend, it's real easy to have a conversation.
Except when you're sitting in the same room and you're 20 years old, apparently.
And you have focus. And you have a topic to focus on. Yeah.
I see. So then what was the first real episode? So you're like, okay, my gear didn't light on fire. And who was your first guest?
Yeah, no, I'd be more than happy to give him a shout out. It was Eric Lucas. And Eric is out of Northern California, and he runs buypetshrimp.com.
Okay.
And so I was basically and this may actually be one of your questions, but
this is leading into that question.
I was looking for guests, and I came across his name, and I saw he had a website, so I went to his website.
How did you come across it? Like,
So-
because you could pick any business in the world, and all of a sudden you ended up in this business that's like not super well known.
Yeah, so my trade secret to find guests is I actually will Google and I look at the speaker lineup of all of pretty much the U.S. fish clubs, and I look through their listings. And typically, what I try to focus on are people that aren't readily prevalent in the hobby from a social media standpoint.
Yeah, so you avoid me.
Completely avoid Corey at all costs, like the plague. Only because, I mean, there's kind of two reasons. One is you've already got a platform or people in the
super
social media
played out.
sphere.
I get it. Yeah.
They have a platform already, and they may be less inclined to want to collaborate, right? And kind of the third would be that, whatever they have to say may very well be out there, and it's more of a fear of rejection. It's like, well, dude, I've already talked about live bears 1,000 times. I don't want to talk on
So I was going to ask that, like, let's say you see the speaker lineup. I know from clubs, it's like you've got your like A-list celebrities where like, oh, that costs a lot of money to fly in. And then you might have like, oh, that's the local guy. And so were you dodging the big ones, or were you just like...
It's not that I was dodging them. It's just, I just knew that I wouldn't be at the point when I first started, or maybe even now or months from now, to engage somebody like, celebrity world traveler fish collector. You know what I mean?
Sure.
So
like a Heiko Blair or something like that.
Like a Heiko Blair, exactly.
Yeah.
If he's even within cell reception at any given time to even do an interview, right? So yeah, I saw Eric's name on the Sacramento Aquarium Club, which I was a member of when I did live in Sacramento. I went to one whole meeting. In that meeting, the guy talked about planted tanks, and I thought it was the most boring thing ever.
Nice.
But I stayed because the auction was so awesome, right? Like that's what really hooked me in. And funny, now 10 years later, I'm all about the planted aquariums.
Yeah.
So yeah, I saw Eric's name on there. I went to his website and was like, hey, let's see if I can message this guy. And so some of the websites, they have the e-commerce websites have like the contact us or chat with us. And so it popped up on his website, and I was like, hey, Eric, I'm starting a podcast. Would you like to be a guest?
Yeah.
And like 2 minutes later, he answered.
And was he legit?
It was amazing.
Was he legit the first person you reached out to?
I think he might have legitimately been the first person I reached out to. Yeah. And so Eric said yes, and that was, super awesome of him to do that. We had a fantastic conversation. That is episode 1. I will give the disclaimer that anybody that goes back to actually listen to that, if you haven't already, there's probably a good chance you haven't listened to it. Any of you people in there was
a few
top
fans
chat
in here that have, like Barbara Jackson said, she's already listened to all of them.
Oh, okay. Well, so episode 1, my very intro, I didn't pace myself. I just kind of like, hi, my name's Randy. I want to do a podcast.
You went like Micro Machines guy?
I kind of micro machined it, and I didn't catch it, and that was actually pre-recorded, right? So I do an intro pre-recorded, the interview pre-recorded, and then an outro. And so all those things, like I have a lot of, at least the intro, the outro, I have a lot of
you have plenty of
over.
chances not to screw that up.
But I think I was just so like nervous and anxious to upload my first
drop the nuke,
ever.
Send it. Let's get this out into the public and see if people hate it.
Exactly. So I give that little disclaimer, like cut me some slack. It's not my best work, and I'm sure even now some of the stuff there's things that I'll look back in a few episodes and kind of cringe at.
It's always that way.
Yeah,
I mean, if you're doing it right. If you're not doing it right, you won't evolve, but you should always be evolving. Eventually there's kind of a cap, but there'll be like, I could see a realm where you're like, okay, I've got wicked good equipment. Like, what if we actually had the discussion in the rainforest, so you actually heard the birds? Like, that'd be like another level up of like you're intentionally bringing in background noise or something like that. So.
Well, that's what we do with Bentley's episode. So he had his fish tanks running, and I didn't even ask him to shut them down. I figured that it would add to some good background noise. But what ended up happening is the recorder that I use, which I still believe is a very good quality recorder, I had it on the auto tune setting, and so it was fluctuating a bit.
Okay.
So on that episode, I'm no sound engineer, but I did my best with the software that I use to try to minimize that,
like to normalize it or something.
To try to normalize it. I think some of it, though, there still are some some harsher peaks and valleys, and hopefully that's not blowing up people's eardrums, right? If you have it set to a low volume, and then all of a sudden I come in with a terrible joke at a loud volume, and it splits your ears, I apologize.
I like to give him the clap just out of nowhere. Ow! Yeah.
I got to try that one.
Doesn't go over so well, especially with a live audience. Yeah. So yeah, you're using like a what to do the show. That's kind of so. Let's say everyone in the audience is like, man, I'm starting a podcast. I'm gonna destroy this fool, right? How much are you into it? So like, let's say someone wants to start a podcast tomorrow. What do they got to have? $300, $500? What do you think?
Well, it depends if my wife is actually watching this. I can't tell you how much I spent. No, I went fairly inexpensive on the equipment because from what it seems like, at the level that at the level I'm at, the level I thought I was going to be at, just the first foray, I didn't have to go all out. And so I ended up getting a microphone, like a 5-star reviewed microphone. And actually you commented that I had good audio quality, which blew me away, but it's like a $30 microphone on Amazon.
Yeah.
I think for $30, it came with the boom arm, the pop filter, the little foam fuzzy guy.
I think I have that sitting down there. You want to hand that to me, Jimmy? Because I bought this. I was going to do an episode on this channel of like, here's the cheapest audio I think you can get for like $30.
It's different brands.
Because it came with the pop filter and the arm. Because this has been rebranded a billion times.
Although with the gold on there, though, I mean,
they had like a silver, but I had to go gangster.
Oh my goodness!
But yeah, so that's might be a video coming down the road on how, because it was like it got crazy good reviews, and all told it was like $30 and. But yeah, so it doesn't have to be expensive.
Yeah, and then I watched some YouTube reviews of like audio guys. So like if like with all things I'm learning, if there's a hobby or a niche, there is a mass creator community followers of that. So like audiophiles, microphone. I mean, it's incredible. Like just how much information is out there.
Yeah.
Just outside of our fun hobby that we do with keeping animals and plants in boxes and water.
Yeah. So you got the microphone, and then what? Your recorder?
So the recorder is I use Audacity, so that's a free program. Download that online for free.
Yep.
Windows program, and that was actually the first audio program that was the audio program that my friend and I were attempting to use with our podcast 10 years ago. So Audacity's been around for a long time.
And even we use Audacity to clean up audio. So even when it's like, I won't say money is no issue, but if there was something like clearly better, that was like $100, we would buy that. But Audacity is great.
Yeah, and then the only other major piece of equipment is just a Behringer or actually I think it's a 4-channel USB mixer that I got open box special at Guitar Center.
Nice.
Yeah, and the guy assured me if it didn't work, I could bring it back. So
nice.
Yeah.
Well, that's cool. So someone in the chat's got a question. Did you start the podcast before creating a following on YouTube and Instagram, or even an online presence, or did you just like come out of nowhere?
Came out of nowhere. I actually had deleted Instagram and Facebook from years and years ago. So
even your personal?
Yeah. I came out of the woodwork for this thing.
No doubt, because like I friended you on Facebook, and so, wow, commitment. You're all in.
All in, yeah.
So I want to give a little bit of background context. So, like, I don't know how to describe it, but I would say you have a fairly, I don't know if I want to call it high profile, or you have a career. You've gone to school, and so you have a career. So this isn't meant to be like a money thing, because it's...
No, it's quite the opposite at this point.
Yeah, so what do you do? Like, you don't necessarily have to say where you work or anything like that, but what do you do for work, or what, like, and why is the podcast like an outlet? Is it a stress reliever, or...
Sometimes it's actually a stress creator. I don't necessarily know if it's a stress reliever. So I work for a tech company that deals in operations. Basically, I'm in supply chain. So I'm a senior program manager for a very, very well-known company. I do a little bit of travel out to certain operations facilities and help them with process improvements and software tool creation, just kind of optimization stuff to be very, very high level. And so that's why...
a nerd. Yeah, I got it.
Yeah. And so that's why when people see that, I'm in New York or I'm in Toronto, like it's not this like, oh my God, this guy's got like this lavish lifestyle. No,
that podcast is taking off.
Yeah. No, that's just like, I am just getting very, very lucky and fortunate that I happen to be in areas where we have facilities that, there's something fish related that I can go check out, or an amazing past guest like Joe Fredenzi on Long Island that I can go and have a wonderful dinner with him and his wife and tour his fish room and just get treated like family. So very, very blessed in that respect.
Yeah. Where was it on here? I saw something that I wanted to ask, but...
You work for Windows.
That's right.
Yes. No, I don't work. I don't even... Microsoft?
That's right. He works for Linux. He's that nerdy.
I actually dress up in the Linux penguin suit.
Yeah.
And so I'm the mascot.
People don't know that's actually how he does all the podcasts. It's a little awkward, and that's why he doesn't do YouTube. But I mean, it's the only way you can get him to come out of a shell.
There you go.
Penguin shell. So you release your first podcast.
Hold on. Rate me as an interviewee. How am I doing so far?
So far?
Are you having to pull questions out of me?
No.
Okay, good.
No.
Good.
You're doing fine.
All right.
Yeah.
Just want to make sure.
Like, normally, I'm a little bit more fired with my questions because I usually have a day or two. I do all my thinking in the shower. I'm like, okay, yeah, I got 3 or 4 questions. And then people usually fill in with the rest. And then usually we'll be talking, and then something's going to come out that's like wildly fascinating, and we'll just derail onto that, and it'll be wicked cool. So,
I like it.
But, so far you've been so boring. That hasn't happened yet, so it's really a struggle over here.
It happens.
Yeah.
Kind of, tragic story of my life, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm.
Flynn's Fish Farm, you work for Chef Boyardee.
If Flynn's dreams could come true.
I would have a chef hat on. I have a chef hat on right now.
That's right. So you released your first podcast, and did you promote it? Like, what happened? Like, let's say, okay, here's a better thing. What time do you release podcasts? Does it matter?
It does. So the podcasts that I listen to, they publish on a regular basis, whether it's weekly, bi-weekly, whatever it may be. But I know that once I get caught up on all their past content, I can look forward to their next episode dropping on a Wednesday or whatever it may be.
And what did you pick?
I think I picked Friday.
Okay.
And there was, I understand that there is that is a decision in and of itself, what day of the week you release, right? Do you drop on a Friday so people can download it, listen to it on their way home from work, or have it primed and ready to go on the weekend? Do you drop it on a Monday so, once people are in the office and they're not doing work and they're on their
Or is everyone else dropping on a Monday?
Right.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there's all sorts of questions like that. I think I just picked Friday because that was, I think, my first episode recorded on Thursday.
Okay.
And I was anxious and I wanted to drop it on a Friday. And then as far as sharing it, which I think is where you're going.
Yeah, my question is, what did you do to promote it? And then what did the view count look like at the 24-hour mark? Because I'm guessing you checked about every hour. Like, no one watched it. Okay. No one. Okay. Oh, 2 people.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's like you have a crystal ball, Corey.
Only because I've lived through this madness before where it's like, dang it, my grandma listened to it twice, but she called me.
So I think what made picking Eric Lucas or having Eric Lucas be the first guest on the show was that, and he had even talked about this, but the Facebook group, U.S. Shrimp and Plants.
Oh yeah.
Okay, so that group.
Yep.
He's been in the hobby for a long time. I think he's one of those guys back when they say the forum days. I think he's one of those guys.
OG.
So he knows a lot of people, right?
Yeah.
And so he dropped it on that group, that Facebook group, and I think 150 people downloaded it in that first day after he published that, and that was huge. And so I think all of my growth, for the most part, has been fairly organic from Facebook shares. I will say that I did, I've kind of gone off the rails a little bit and super chatted a little bit on your show for some plugs, and I do feel a little guilty about that.
I do want to point something out that I remember kind of being a butthole to you at the beginning because so many people do that, and I was like, look, guy.
Yeah.
If your podcast is awesome and it's still around in like a month, I'll take a listen. And I just kind of want to point out that
I just wanted to interview you. I didn't actually
Yeah, well, that's not how I took it. But because I'm a jaded guy, but I do want to say that this is an example of how it actually works. Like he kept doing it, obviously 16, 17 weeks from that point or whenever he did it, and then here you are on the show. So it's like once you establish that you're not an axe murderer, there is a legit chance that something like this can happen, and it's proof that I'm not just a horrible guy to everyone. You have to have a little bit of persistence and do some good work, which I think you are. And so anyway, you throw out some super chats.
Throw out some super chats. I think I maybe pick up, if I were to tally up my super chat dollars to subscribers, maybe for $20 worth of super chats, I got 2 viewers, 2 listeners. I don't know. So it's
not terrible.
I don't know.
Return.
It's probably better than that. But yeah, besides that, really nothing. And I really just
to be fair though, that $20 in super chats led to this point. I'm wagering I can get you at least $1 to 1 subscriber. I'm hoping I can leverage that for you.
We've been business nerding out on metrics and KPIs and all sorts of fun stuff like that. So. So yeah, I mean, it's just really relying on organic growth and just hoping that the content that it's not so much I bring, it's what the guests bring, right?
Yeah.
I mean, if I'm a vehicle for good conversation and that's what I can produce, then so be it. But I just hope that the content carries itself and that people just kind of share it on their own. And if you have any free time in your commute where you would normally be listening to talk radio or the same hits over and over again, but you like fish, I feel like you should listen to me once a week.
Yeah.
Stay up to date on the episodes, or not so much me, but just the show, and listen to what my guests have to say. I try to go from all over the hobby and not just focus on one particular area. And again, because I understand that if the show were to be about me 100%, it would not be anything worthwhile to listen to, in my humble opinion.
Yeah. How long is your show for people that don't know, and how did you arrive at that length?
I shoot for, so I think I've always had at a minimum 30 minutes is kind of like the bare minimum I feel is acceptable. When I scroll through iTunes feeds and I see a podcast is less than 20 minutes, I don't even want to listen to it. I don't want to download it, because I feel like you're going to have 2 minutes of just pure intro. Maybe there's some substance, and then you're done. And then, the average American commute is, I think, 30 to 45 minutes. So then I have to fumble through while I'm trying to drive and listen to, and try to find something else to listen to. So that's
Which you would never do, because that's illegal.
Totally illegal.
Yep.
Siri, can you find me a new podcast?
That's right.
I think that's what I do. So 45 minutes, 30 at a bare minimum. I think I've only had one episode that was that short, and that was only because of just a time constraint on my guest. That was with Lawrence Kent, where I was actually at his work, and he had a meeting, had a hard
He's
stop.
worth about $1,000 a minute.
Yes,
so.
his like 25-minute conversation was worth,
it legit
was totally worth
took
it.
me 2 years to be able to film this fish room. I had been there before once, and he wanted me to be there, but it took 2 years of like steady back and forth to make it happen, because that guy makes me look like I don't do any work.
Is that actually up? I need to go back and watch that.
You can
That's
go
awesome.
watch. Yeah, we toured his fish room. Yeah.
Oh, that's sweet. Yeah, so I need to go back and watch that.
The Lawrence Kent fish room.
Yeah, so yeah, 45 minutes to an hour is kind of ideal, that bread and butter, so that you listen to you're able to get through your first commute to work on the podcast, and then maybe on the drive home you have a little bit left over, and it's kind of like this added bonus, right?
Okay.
And then you have to illegally change to something else while you're texting and driving or whatnot. So that's kind of the thought process. And I think for my guests, and just time wise, I don't want to take up too much of their time. So trying to keep the conversation to about a 45-minute average is pretty good, I think.
And so obviously I'm not asking a name. Have you ever had a guest that was like you had to abort?
Court.
Yeah. Well, I wasn't asking for names there, but has it ever been like, oh my God, this is actually a train wreck, this can't go on the air, or anything like that? Or has it been just like, oh man, it's home run after home run?
So it was only a train wreck because of me. So one of the early episodes with the guest, I had done my research and tried to frame what I thought would be the kind of the outline of the interview, and we were going to hit X, Y, and Z topics, and I just did a terrible job of, at least I feel, of interviewing that person. And within the first 10 minutes of going through the edit process, which I do very, very minimal edit, it's just trying to get things out, like if I'm breathing too close to the microphone, I'll try to like edit that out, or if I knock something against the microphone stand. But yeah, I mean, just listening to it, and even when we concluded the interview, I felt like I did a terrible job, and I did them a disservice.
Yeah.
It's not that Randy sounded bad; it's that I just didn't make that person out to be the awesome fish keeper that they are.
Right. You didn't lift them up.
Exactly. Yeah. And so I told the person a week later, I'm like, look, I'm so sorry. Can we please reschedule? Like, I'm so sorry that I'm having to do this to you. And they were kind enough and gracious enough to let me reschedule, and we had a great interview.
Wow.
And it's posted. Yeah.
Awesome.
So,
yeah. So what goes into, let's say, someone goes, yeah, I'll do the interview. What happens then? Like, do you start researching them, or did you research them before you asked them? Or like, what's the prep before, like obviously you must have learned from that episode. And so now what do you do to make sure that doesn't happen again?
Well, what I learned from that episode is just don't stretch. You don't have to try to cover, 1,000 topics in one episode. And honestly, if you've got one or two strong topics, and again, that's just for my format. if you've got one or two strong topics that person specializes in, that usually makes for a good conversation. And that, it's all about looking for the nuggets that, somebody's going to gloss over, that as they say it to them, it's just second nature to them, right? But
Right.
to somebody that doesn't know them or doesn't know the subject as well as they do, you have to go back and kind of unpack that little nugget of goodness. I think I've actually called it directly that sometimes on the show. But you need them to further expand on that thought process, right? Because I try to assume, and I'm by no means an advanced aquarist, but I really want to, if they say something that's very, Corydora specific, right? Like if you only breed Corys, like that term.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying Matt did this on our episode. We talked about Corys, but just as an example, somebody super into Corys would know that, but somebody that's just, never kept Corys, but they're listening, they might not. And
they might not know that, corridors release toxins and things like that. Like you say it nonchalantly, but not everyone knows that.
And then I'm just like, oh, yeah. And then we move on to the next topic. Like, whoa, hold on. Like, what are we talking about? Expand on that a little bit more. So,
yeah. So someone had said that you have 83 YouTube subscribers. Is that true? And someone said we could probably get them to 100.
Well, and so that's the thing about the podcast is I don't know if it makes more sense to say, hey guys, no, go to iTunes, or subscribe at the YouTube. But I mean, I'm an audio podcast, and so I actually have like Podbean and all these other places, and that from a, this is not my day job. I have no illusions that this will be my day job.
Right.
If by some fortuitous way it happens.
Yeah.
But if I was ever to monetize it, like, you want to try to direct it to the podcast hosting service or iTunes or one of those where the metrics roll back to your podcast host. Because what happens right now is after I record an episode and I publish it and it pushes to iTunes, those views are like completely lost to my server, to my host.
Oh.
So when it comes time to monetizing, if I ever want to do ads on that podcast through the host, they don't know that I get 1,000 views per episode on YouTube or whatever it is, right? That's completely, that's blind to them. Now, why did I do that? Well, I did it because people asked me to.
Right.
I had a couple people that, and again, when you don't have many people listening to your show and you've got a couple people that
Three people are going, hey, I'd listen. You're going, well, that's like a 50% increase.
I think it'd be better if you put it on YouTube. I'm already listening to a lot of stuff on there when I'm at work on my computer. Could you go ahead and just, have those pushed to YouTube? And I'm like, well, yeah.
Where do you like people to leave comments? Do you like it on YouTube? Do you like it on, what is it? I guess, because like for me, I find that like
I don't even know at this point, to be honest with
they'll
you.
leave them in different places and it's kind of a pain. Like when it's like, oh, this one's on like, the Stitcher. Oh, on my website. Oh, on the.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I guess, leave the comment wherever you feel most appropriate, but the best thing you could do is just share it.
Yeah.
I mean, share and wherever you have the most impact with your fish friends, that's, share. I think that's the biggest thing.
Yeah. And so
should I look at you or should I look at the screen? Like, how do we do this?
Well, it depends. Like if you're talking,
this is why I do audio.
Yeah, if you're talking to me, you can look at me, but you should acknowledge that there's people out there once. You could like wave, hello. This is live, not in the future. So there's no going back and scrubbing everything, to sanitize. But so I've got another loaded question for you. Does your wife listen to the stream? Or the podcast?
There was one episode in particular I really encouraged you to. I don't think she did though.
Oh, so there was one in particular like you're gonna like this one?
I was like, I think you'll really, really like this one, but I don't think she listened to it.
Doesn't it hurt when like your significant other can't make the 1 hour commitment to something you're like, but this is really special to me?
No, but not really. I mean, I guess it would be nice, but at the same time, then I mean, she'd hear me talk about like all these plans to expand the fish room, and I mean, this is like covert conversation. Like this is almost all top secret.
But in theory, if your podcast made money, then you can be like, but it's making money. That's why I have to expand.
I think the biggest benefit of the podcast is it shows her that this time around back into the hobby. Now, granted, I got out of the hobby because we moved. We went from a 2,000 square foot house to a 500 square foot, like 1 bedroom hole in the wall, right? So I couldn't have 200 gallon tanks and 55 gallon tanks. Like I couldn't do that. But I think this just to her solidifies that, no, like he's genuinely passionate about this and, he just got back in it. I know why he got out of it. And it's something that, as a spouse, I will at least tolerate.
Sure. Yeah. And so you have to schedule all these interviews with other people, right? Has there ever been like weird times where you're like, yeah, I got to be up at 5 a.m. You got to deal with the baby or the kid because I got to interview someone.
I try and schedule around the family life as much as possible, which can be challenging when you working a 9 to 5, getting home at 6 in the evening. And again, so Pacific time, right? Some of my guests have been on the East Coast,
Yeah.
or Central time or Mountain time. And so everybody's ahead of us. And there have been some times where, because I was already working from home on a particular day, I was able to have a much earlier conversation with a guest on the East Coast than I normally would have. For them, it's like, no, this is like my drive home time. Like, this works perfect for me. Where for me, it's like, man, this is like normally 2 o'clock. Like, I'd still be at work right now. But I was able to just take a little bit of a break from my work at home to actually conduct that interview. The craziest one, or the most difficult one, was actually scheduling with somebody in Pennsylvania. And the only time that would work for them was very early in the morning, like on their driving to work, which is even earlier for us. And I have allergies, so when I wake up in the morning, I sound like crap. Like, it's just not good. So that, probably more information than people wanted to know, but
no, I think that's real important stuff. Like, if someone was going to start a podcast of, like, I would have never thought about that until I was trying to schedule guests and just do things where it's like different time zones. They've got stuff going on. Like, a lot of times I'll run into stuff where it's like, I'm only free after 11 p.m. I told you that. And it's like, oh, okay, well, I got stuff I got to do too, So I think that's one of the harder things. Like, you do have more access, like, so compared to like the Real Fish Talk, where we do a podcast and people come in here, and so to get people on the show, they have to physically come here. You can just call someone.
Yep.
Like, that's a huge leg up because the barrier of entry is a phone call as opposed to a plane ticket.
Yeah, and I very much say that the podcast is lightweight. I don't think that I could commit any more time to something that is more grandiose or more involved than the phone call. Now, don't get me wrong, like, that's not to say that it's incredibly easy and it's just as simple as calling somebody to put it on. Like, there's a surprising good amount of work. There's a good amount of legwork, at least to put out something that I would be proud of and to want people to listen to, which is I hope what I'm able to actually produce.
How much post-production goes into it? So let's say, like, you wrap up the episode, and then do you listen to it once and make the edits? Like, how's that workflow go for you?
It's usually probably a good rule of thumb would be double whatever the actual interview length is. Maybe 1.5, like a time and a half, because I basically have to listen to the entire episode one time fully over, right? I have to cut out like the very beginning of our conversation when it's like, hey, this is Randy, we're not starting yet, but I'm recording, and are there any questions you want to ask me just to become more familiar with me, because I am a complete stranger. Usually, I'll field a couple questions back and forth and we'll have a little conversation. And so it's editing that out. It's editing the conclusion of the interview out after we've said goodbye on the podcast, but we still want to say something to each other after. And then, like I said, it's listening to the entire thing, because I need to get all of those, at least in my head, I need to get out all of those little pop sounds out, and where I accidentally hit the microphone. And when you do buy a cheap microphone, right, that sound transmits and you pick it up. And I could very well leave it in there, but
you're striving for perfection.
I trying to, and I've only had one guest curse. I think I've only cursed once.
Is that something that, like, would you edit that out?
Oh yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Or just silence that particular part of the audio. We might typically, like, we'll acknowledge it. Like, oh man, oh sorry, I didn't mean. I'm like, oh, I'll leave that in, or I'll edit. Don't worry, I'll edit it out, and so we'll just continue on. There's only been some times where I've had to cut entire like sections of conversation out because I distracted my guest or they got distracted, and it was just like, oh crap, I'm sorry, what were we talking about?
Have they ever asked you to remove something, like, after talking about it? Have you ever had a guest be like, actually, let's not put that out?
No, I think it's been, I think everybody's been pretty good as far as, whatever content they say or whatever comes out of their mouth, they're good with, hitting the airwaves, and they probably figure nobody's listening anyways.
Right. I mean, that's what they got going for them. Yeah, that's why they set aside the time for you. So that brings up a good question. Like, if your show is an hour, how long does it usually last? So you're like, okay, I'm going to call this person for an hour. Do you know that it's going to be a 2-hour call? Because you got to warm them up at the beginning, and like, you think it goes for,
I'm trying to be more concise with it now that I've gotten, a good number of interviews under my belt where, I was buffering to just have like this full in-depth conversation so that they were familiar with me. And so, talking to them for 20 minutes before we actually have the interview, I'm trying to cut that back as much as possible to just say, hey, is any other questions? No. Okay. Here's my intro. Let me go ahead and go through that with you. And then let's just get into it. Yeah.
So a question from Michael Faulkner: how do you handle not being able to see the other person while you're interviewing? Would think it's someone you've never met, and that aspect would be a major wrinkle in the flow of the interview.
No, I don't think. If anything, I think that people are more comfortable when they're not, when you're not face to face or when you're not Skyping. And I think the fact that it's only audio is why people are, some people that might not willing to do it are actually okay with doing it. And maybe that's one of the aspects of where you guys might have trouble. One, we're in Seattle, right? So people have to get on a plane potentially to come here.
And we're the furthest away from everyone possible.
Yeah, but I mean, let's say we could pick up Mabu Studios and fly it wherever they are and land it in their backyard. Yeah. They just may be somebody like, hey, I got into fish because I'm an introvert.
Right.
I don't want to have my face blasted all over the internet.
Well, I ran into that with the pufferfish expert in Germany. I was like, hey man, can I ask you questions? Like, yeah, but I can't be on camera. I was like, oh. Yeah. All right, then we'll just leave you out because I don't want to, I didn't want to encroach on them. But I've run into that for sure.
Yeah, and honestly, in this day and age, like that makes sense to me. And so I can't fault anybody for that. And I think telling them, hey, it's audio only. Like we don't have to have you on camera. I'm gonna be in pajamas or my hair is gonna be all messed up. So it's perfectly fine. Like we just need to be able to have a conversation with each other. And that's the whole. Vetting process. I have no vetting process. You just need to be somebody that...
Like you said, yes, you're in.
Yeah, you're in. Let's go. Let's do this. Do you keep fish? Yes, then we can have a conversation.
So here I thought of a question that, maybe it's not a problem for you now, but I see it being a problem in the future, maybe. Do you call people from your actual cell phone number, or do you have a Skype number you call them from so they can't necessarily just have direct access back to you?
It's actually a Google Hangout number.
Okay.
So it is a Google provided Hangout number that I think is it's like Mountain House, California. I think is the area code of it. But people give me their real number.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, that seems more likely. But yeah, I was going to say, because if you're not safeguarding yourself, there'll be a point where you're like, oh my God, my number's everywhere. Yeah. And the bat phone's ringing again. The Turtle Girl asks, is it ever awkward?
I think if it's only ever awkward, it's because I was not present in the conversation at that specific moment when they took a pause. And it's like, okay, I'm done with my thought now, and I'm like, and I have to kind of,
you're like, where am? Okay, this is the next one.
And that's probably the other struggle that while I have a really good time interviewing people, I'm constantly on my toes, and maybe right now, Corey, you're doing the same. You're listening for the next question that you want to develop on. So it's not just as enjoyable as having a fun conversation with your friend. You're working, your mind is racing to try to think of what those next questions are going to be, because you don't want the dead air in your conversation, and you want to just continue to flow the conversation with your guests so that they don't feel awkward.
So I've seen a couple things we're going to hit with this question. When doing a podcast, do you go off set topics, or is it just going to be what topics come up? So do you set... do you let's say you go in and you're gonna interview me. I think we know that you have some topics you want to address, but do you ever just oh, this is so good, we should just abandon this and go with it? Or have you ever had to change topics where they just hit you with the yep, and then you're like, okay, that one's dead, or they don't want to talk about that? Or
I think I try to frame what I want the interview to be about based on kind of their specialty or something that they're really into. I would say tangents, I think we will kind of go down related bits of conversation to the main topic. But I don't think I diverge too far from kind of the intended topic of conversation. Maybe with Zach Frank from World Pet Association, he and I talked a bit more about what could retailers do to bring more people in, and just kind of growing the hobby in general, than actually focusing on just talking about the aquatic experience, because that was the whole point of the conversation. Was the formula is my intro, we talk about your origin story, how'd you get in the hobby, and then like meat of the conversation, like whatever I've kind of framed to say this is what we should talk about for this show. For him, it was aquatic experience, but we ended up having such in-depth conversation on just growing the hobby that ended up being, I think, a good chunk of the show. And then it was like, oh man, I've already had you on for quite a bit of time. Like, we still need to pump the aquatic experience and plug that and talk about how cool that show is. So,
do you see yourself interviewing someone you've interviewed again in the future?
So I've only interviewed a past guest again once or twice once, and that was Joe Ferdenzi, when I was able to actually partner up a work trip and actually go to his house. Yeah. And that was just an opportunity that I couldn't pass up.
Sure.
So,
yeah.
But no, totally. I mean, there's every one of these guests, I think I almost end with, I need to have you back on to talk about a different topic. Yeah. Right. So.
So what topics are coming up? Maybe you can say the guests if you want, and what you can Randy off, what you can Randy off here. But I think Joel, like you had Joel on the show, and he'll be coming out at what point? Like, what are the teaser topics you guys talked about?
For Joel, kind of coining him the Bob Vila of the aquarium hobby.
Oh.
And I mean, I'm in the studio that is a product of his experience and his hard work. And just watching these videos and seeing what he can do, like from a craftsman perspective, it's incredible. So, kind of wanting to unpack and understand that part of him. There's some people that there's one guy in particular that does some 3D printing stuff for the hobby.
Oh.
So I'm gonna have him on in a couple weeks. I mean, just kind of you name it. Like I want to have.
What were the topics that you interviewed me on?
Oh, do we want to tease that?
Yeah, why not? Because it's not coming out for a while, so they're going to have to put up with your crap for at least a few more weeks before they can get a little taste of my badness.
I think your episode is the big number 20, the big 20.
That's what I'm talking about.
Right?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, just wanting to leverage your experience, your retail experience, being so close to consumers, understanding consumer trends, but also your experience traveling around to different parts of our country, but then also globally, and being able to compare and contrast the aquarium hobby in many different respects in the United States and globally. So I don't know how many people I could have a conversation like that with. I told you earlier that I don't want to hit you with the standard, hey, let's talk about fancy guppies, or let's talk about freshwater puffers. Like, we know that's what you do, right?
Yeah.
And like, we can find that content out there. I wanted to challenge you to talk about something that hopefully you don't get to talk about very often, and hopefully it was very engaging for you. So
yeah. So my question.
He didn't say it was.
I've been waiting all stream. It's late enough now. We got about 12 minutes left. That if you quit, we're okay. We've hit the timeline.
All right.
What's it like to interview someone like me, where I know I tend to dominate the conversation? Is it hard to pull me back? Like, okay, you've gone on for 12 minutes on this. I need to switch topic. And have you run into that with other people? And then do you have a trick to be like, all right, guy, let's move?
I think that's a good problem to have when your guest wants to talk and keep talking. Like, if it's, hey, Randy, you can have somebody that's going to talk on something, and you're going to have to kind of pump the brakes and stop them. Or do you want to talk to somebody you're going to have to basically put in the dental chair and do a root canal on to extract any answers out of? I would take you, just bulldozing through questions and rambling on. Not that you rambled on, but just going, right?
Yeah.
Like, I would rather have that in my guests. And no, I don't think, no, it hasn't been too bad.
Awesome. So you haven't run into that with other people either, because that I know, like with the Real Fish Talk, I know I have a bad habit of just like bulldozing of like, because in my mind I'm always like, oh, think of the next question, think of the next thing, and we have two hosts, and so it's a bit harder. But I almost want to dial it back, but I notice myself doing it even in conversation with people. Like, they ask my opinion. have all of my opinion now, you know?
Yeah, the only thing I have in the back of my mind when that does happen is I hope that the guests, or no, I'm sorry, not the guests. I hope that the people listening are good with this, right? I hope they don't think that I'm taking the easy way out by not, stepping in to ask a question.
Yep.
That's going to be the more common thought that's in the back of my mind. It's all about the guest or the listener experience. The guest experience is important, but
right.
I want to make sure that equally as important is that the people listening to the show, they don't think that I'm just kind of sitting back on cruise control. Like I'm waiting for my opening. I'm jotting notes down of things that they said that I want to have them develop on further. So. Yeah.
Have you had any problems with like the dog barking in the background, people like interrupting the interview, like either on either side type of thing?
So that hidden episode or the lost episode, the one with my buddy in San Diego, like he was like hanging out with his wife on the couch and she's like talking. I'm like, dude, what are you doing? Like I'm trying to see if I'm a good interviewer or not, and you're like flipping through Netflix in the background. Like what's going on? So there was that, but one of the episodes I just recorded that'll come out, there's a Great Dane barking in the background, and we kind of comment on it, and it was funny, but it just, it adds a little bit of a break from the fish talk, but not so much that it's like, oh, I can't listen to this anymore. At least I don't think so. I thought it was perfectly fine.
So we've got a couple of super chats. Mr. B says, just cause, good show. And KG Cichlids, who's been a supporter about anything fish related on the planet, says, what was your first memory of keeping fish?
First memory of keeping fish would probably be, 6 or 7 years old, and it was the family, probably a 55-gallon tank in the front room.
So like the parents were into it.
My dad was into it, yeah. And this community tank like just had everything in it. And this is back when, where I grew up, the malls had like legit pet stores where they had dogs and cats and puppy mill and whatnot. But no, we didn't know that back then.
Yeah.
And they had, their fish collections. And I always remember, when we would go to the mall, like we'd go into the pet store and we would just get like random small fish without like really any consideration of what would even go into the
that
tank.
One looks nice and I can afford it.
Pretty much, yeah. And so I, the memories as a kid of watching somebody dip the plastic little hang-on container and then put the bag in, dip it in, fish the fish out. So those are very, kind of fond memories. They're a little faded, right? Just because I was so young.
Sure.
But I do know for a fact that we had like a comet goldfish that just lived forever and was the massive, like I just picture this thing swimming back and forth in the tank, under gravel filter, which I know, Joel is extremely passionate
I'm all
about.
about that under gravel filter.
And Joel wants to bring that under gravel filter back big time.
Yeah.
But with a little charcoal up in the top. So, those memories, and I don't know if we ever changed the water on it. If we did, it was once a year, and we took all, we just used buckets to empty it and a garden hose to fill it back up. But it was a mess. Maybe we had one of the crazy bubblers. I'm sure we had like either the clam or the old school.
Had to be the diver, right? Yeah.
I think it might have been the diver.
Yeah, for sure. So we got like 7 minutes left. So if you had, so I got a couple of questions. What's your percentage, like what's your strikeout rate? Like, so if you send out 10 invites, well, that's a good question. Let me back that up. When you do ask, is it like, oh, it's my day off, let me hit up 12 people? Or is it one at a time? Like, what's your, like, how big of a batch? And then, like, what's the hell no, I'm not coming on your podcast to, yeah, I want to be on it ratio?
I think I've had, so the question of sending out invites, I think I do it more in batch. And I'll maybe do 5 or 6 at a time.
Yep.
And then as far as like my success, like conversion rate of actually getting people on the show, I think it's higher than I thought it would be. Probably 60%, I would say, of inquiries. Yeah. So I mean, it's surprising, right?
Yeah. I mean, that, I think that's a lot higher than I would have expected, honestly. Like, I don't even think not saying that I should be able to get more than you, but like, I don't think I would get that success rate asking people on one of my shows or something like that. That seems really high. But I also think maybe you get a little bit better ratio because you're asking people that might not already be on YouTube or a social media platform, so maybe they don't get asked as much, so you might have that going for you. And then who's on like oh man, I hope I can get them on the show? Do you have like a list of like, I haven't asked them yet because I think I gotta get bigger? Or like, is there like some people in the wings of like, oh man, how do I get that person on the show?
Yeah, I mean, I would say, yourself and Joel are probably, you guys.
Well, that was easy mode. You already did that.
Yeah, you guys were like, the of the people on YouTube, like who would I watch? Like you guys are definitely on there. So
Well, even not YouTube, is there just like people in like, oh man, that person?
I don't know if it's one person or not, but I would love to have like a rep from every major manufacturer come on.
Okay.
I feel like to me, having to go through their, PR channels and all that, like there's a lot of structure there and there's a lot of control. And I would love to be able to have somebody on to have candid conversations about their products, about what they view of the market, what they see in terms of trends. But I mean, you pick your, Heiko Blair, you pick your Oliver Knott, any of these guys, any of these big names in the hobby. I feel really thrilled that I can say, guys like Lawrence Kent and Greg Steves, like, Titans, when you see big conventions are happening, those guys are speakers, like that's huge. So I feel really blessed to already be able to say that I've interviewed people like that and can kind of, like Greg Steves, I was in Hawaii and they had cichlids in the big koi pond, and I'm like, Greg, what is this fish? And I'd stick a crappy cell phone picture, and he's like, I think it's probably a tilapia, but I'm like, cool.
I hadn't thought about that aspect of like, so you're interviewing these Titans and you naturally get their cell phone number, or not, maybe not their cell phone number, but their number, and then you're just like, hey, Lawrence Kent, what's up, buddy?
Yeah.
We going out for tacos or what?
Yeah.
Like you get...
You in the country or what's going on?
Yeah, because you get that access that I was afraid of you giving up to other people, but you get the reverse of like, like even you have my cell phone number. I realized that even you even have mine, so never message me after today, but...
well, too bad I've already put an auction up for your
address. I want someone. I kind of want someone to do that just because then I get to tell the story. Dude, my phone number sold for $170.
This is why I vet people.
That's right. But that's pretty cool because you're like showing them the cichlid and then you probably got an answer, and even though it was a crappy picture or whatever, but like the fact that you had that, it's opening up a ton of doors.
Yeah, I told Greg, if you're ever up in Seattle, I'd love to try to pitch you to the GSAS to have you on to speak at the club. Not that I have much influence, but
well, you're on the board now, right?
I guess I'm kind of on the board. I'm a committee chair, which I guess means you're kind of de facto on the board.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, having him come up here, and I told him like, if you come up, I'll take you, me and Lawrence. Let's go out. We'll get some lunch on me.
Yeah.
Right. So
see, there you are. You're leveraging another Titan. And that way it boosts you up. You're like, well, I got another Titan. Are you turning down Lawrence? He's gonna be pissed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I would say, I mean, he's probably a Titan, but Dr. Jay Stauffer, I think I interviewed him for episode 14. But this is a guy that collaborates with Odd Konings.
Wow.
He's a distinguished ichthyologist at Penn State University.
And he took your call?
He took my call, yeah. He was actually the guy I had to wake up at like 4 a.m. for to take that call. I'm not sure if people quite realize who exactly I was interviewing. I mean, this guy,
I don't know him.
I mean, so many of the cichlids that he's had a part in the actual species description and naming, and basically the reason I had him on was to talk about like what the heck goes into the naming process, the species description, like how do you guys come up with the name, what is that all about, and so that's what that episode's all about.
So we're running down the last minutes. If you had to put your sales pitch on here, and we're all gonna go check out all your crap, right? What's the best episode? Like what's the one where you're like, maybe not the best guess. You just got to go, I think we really nailed it on episode 9.
Ah, jeez.
There had to be one where you're like, that right there, I need more of that. The one he showed to his wife? That might be the one. Is that the one?
So that one would be the first time I interviewed Joe Fredenzi.
Okay.
Only because the amount of passion for killifish that came through Joe Fredenzi's voice, his love of the hobby, his just knowledge, and just the easygoing nature of talking with him.
Yeah.
Not that the other guests haven't been.
Right.
But that episode was just really, really cool, and I really enjoyed that. So, and that's the one I told my wife that she should listen to. And from that conversation, he basically gave me an open invitation. A stranger he'd never met before, right?
Yeah.
Come to my house. And actually, he's sending me some garden rice. So when you join AKA,
nice.
If you pay like an extra $20, one of the members will send you a free breeding pair or a free pair of one of a couple different killifish.
That's
and so
awesome.
when I actually went to his home, I saw the tank that he was going to send me fish from, and so they'll be showing up in like a week or so. I mean, that's just super special connection. So.
And are there any of your guests? You don't have to say which one. Well, you could say which one because it's kind of flattering. But Are there any which you thought there's no way they'd accept, and they were like, sure, man?
I don't know, you.
Really?
Dude,
You live here, though. I don't think that's that much of a stretch.
I don't know, you're busy. Well, so, I mean, you've got a lot going on your plate, though.
Yeah,
And
for sure. But I feel like I would have been like, he's local. I probably got a better chance because I'm a local versus like, you know, I don't know, someone like on the other side of the world or something.
So I haven't. So other than Flynn, I think Flynn's been my only international guest, and that's really not that international, given it's like an hour and a half north of us.
How dare you put Flynn down like that?
But he was the first and only international guest. I would love to have some more international guests on. But yeah, I mean those are going to be tough to schedule. I think trying to figure out. How
Yeah,
to make that
I hadn't
happen.
thought about East Coast time, but then it's like, oh, you're in China. Wait, how many hours? What's going on? Because someone was saying like I should have the puffer guy call in for like the real fish talk. Part of the problem is some people have very strong accents, and like I can do okay with it, but the average public, and then like imagine someone calling in, like maybe the connection's not super strong.
Yeah, audio.
Like,
Yep, that's huge.
and that could suck too. Of like, oh, I lined it up, and they're like, what? Say it again. Like, oh, we can't even use this. So, yeah. All right. Well, it is now 10 o'clock. That is late. I kept him here late. I said, hey, man, you want your shot? We can go right now. And so he was gracious enough to stay late, and his wife was gracious enough to watch the kid and all that. So make sure you go and you check out Aquarist Podcast. It's a little bit hard to spell because it's Aquarist instead of aquarium. But everyone's been putting links, so look at the chat. You can click on one. Then you don't have to spell it. He's on YouTube. He's on Stitcher. He's on Podbean. He's on iTunes. He's on Facebook. He's on Instagram. He's on Jimmy's channel. He got a shout out on Jimmy's channel. He'll be getting a shout out on my channel here pretty soon. I'm guessing you'll see Joel's thing come up, and we'll probably promote the crap out of that because that's what we do. And I would wager he's gonna get a lot more cool guests coming up because he's already got, pardon my French, but people way out of your league. So if you're like at 1,000 downloads, I'm pretty sure you're gonna have like the president on, like all kinds of crazy stuff because you're punching above your weight. So, get in while the getting's good, so you can be like, I was number 100 to subscribe to his YouTube channel. Now that he's at 2 million, you can take that screenshot though. Take that screenshot so that way you can have him sign it when you see him at a convention. Oh, that's a good last point. Once you hit a certain level of like fame, are you gonna show up to like the Aquatic Experience or something like that and be like, it's Randy here from the Aquarist Podcast?
I want to go purely as a hobbyist. I think with the business travel, I have enough miles racked up and hotel points that I might be able to make that happen. It sounds like it's an absolutely awesome time, and I think I've made enough connections just through the podcast that I can mooch from booth to booth and just kind of hang out and enjoy the show, but also mooch on booths.
Mooch on booths. That's a new term right there.
I just swallowed a bug in the air. That was awesome.
Mooch on booth.
That's what happens when you have the door open. My goodness.
It was warm in here today. We don't have all the climates controlled yet.
Jimmy, edit that out.
That's right. Exactly.
This isn't a podcast.
So, all right. Well, thanks for being on the show. Hopefully you guys will enjoy me being on his show. Joel's going to be on his show. He wants to get Jimmy on the show, which we're just going to torture him. It's basically going to be sounds of Jimmy screaming, which I think is going to be great as the interpretive dance once we turn it into a video. So make sure you sub up and check all that stuff out. And let me know what else you guys want to see on this channel. We had someone starting a YouTube channel yesterday. We have someone who started a podcast today. I'm trying to bring more stuff because they come and visit me and we do stuff. And then I'm like, hey, now that I've been on your thing, let me torture you for an hour and see how you like it. So hopefully you guys are enjoying it, and leave comments and go over and leave comments on his stuff. Mostly swear words that he has to delete, and protect everyone from. But either way, he'll know you left it and that you came from the Aquarium Co-op and he felt the wrath. So thank you again, Randy. And we'll definitely have you back sometime.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Thank you all for tuning in.
Bye-bye.